Alternate Canadian Prime Ministers, because why not? Scenario 1. What if Wilfrid Laurier, who already served a pretty long time, got another term? Now, Willie was popular, well, he served that long for a reason, but his ultimate downfall came when he tried negotiating free trade with America because it's right there, which would have benefited the western provinces, who are still developing and very rural, while the East continued the proud tradition of Canada being always scared that Canada will be taken over by America. So Willie, who shaped Canada into what it is and greatly developed the nation, ended up losing because people were too scared of America. So this very easily could have changed with the free trade agreement getting just lost in American bureaucracy a little longer. So gaining more seats in Quebec and the West could very easily secure him another term. The obvious ramifications being that eventually free trade will come, benefiting the West economy instead of immediately nosediving it, and well, some racism like banning black people from entering Canada, which Willie wanted to implement, but it never went into effect before he was voted out, and it probably would have also expanded to other races. But also,
it's time for World War One.
Now, WW1 is romanticized especially hard in Canada, due to it being Canada's first major war, and so many of the best British soldiers were actually Canadian. Willie was for the war, but he was also anti-conscription, much like his home province of Quebec, which would prevent some rioting, but also a lot of people would want to get involved more so. Plus, the British would want more, so he'd probably end up losing the 1917 election to Robert Borden, splitting the Liberal Party between people that were for conscription and people that supported Willie still. Or easily, Wilfrid could easily campaign on you don't change horses in the middle of a war, plus Borden wants to send all your kids to die in a war. So he could easily win in 1917 and continue to be Prime Minister till his death in 19, continuing Wilfrid Laurier's track record of being a mirror to John A. Macdonald, and likewise after his death gets succeeded by a complete nobody who immediately loses the election. So we continue Wilfrid Laurier's troubled yet important legacy. He might have a lot of problems, yet he helped shape Canada to be what it is. Scenario 2. What if Joe Clark became Prime Minister again? He did run for PM in 2000 and didn't make much of a splash. But in 1993, Brian Mulroney resigned due to his failed economic policies and struggled to keep the Conservative Party together, which led to the rise of Kim Campbell, who was a lot less conservative from the West, was associated with the Social Credit Party, was a woman, and was quite young. But she was also an unknown who didn't really have enough time to sell herself to a country that's about to go into the election. So maybe instead Joe Clark decides not to go to Cyprus and runs instead of Kim Campbell. He is a former Prime Minister and he is from the West as well, plus he's young, and a moderate as well, keeping the legacy of the somewhat hypocritically named Progressive Conservative Party. Though in the West a further right Reform Party would still emerge, I feel like Joe Clark would be a little bit better at combating it, but he would also fall apart with the rise of Quebec nationalism with the Bloc Québécois. There's no way he could defend against Jean Chrétien of the Liberals, and I doubt he would ever release the making fun of his stroke commercial. So Clark would still lose, but go down to only 50 seats, instead of Kim Campbell, who went down to 2. So Joe Clark got to be Prime Minister for 3 years, kind of, for 405 days. Combined. Clark would remain as the opposition leader, continuing to denounce the Reform Party as it slowly grows to take over all the conservative votes in Canada. Eventually, Clark has to just resign and let the parties merge into the Alliance, and eventually the Conservative Party by 2004. Joe Clark's legacy continues to be one that he could have easily been Prime Minister longer if he wasn't always in the wrong place at the wrong time, and continued the last gasp of the federal Progressive Conservative Party. Scenario 3. Well, Jack Layton actually became Prime Minister. Now the setup is Stephen Harper has been Prime Minister since 2006, and he really wanted a majority, which he only got in 2011 due to Jack Layton taking the third-party New Democratic Party to second place, and the Liberal Party under Michael Ignatieff completely collapsed. And he was an intellectual centrist who didn't want to go too left, and everyone hated him. due to him spending most of his life outside of Canada, trying to say he's just a normal guy who happened to be really rich. He spoke the wrong kind of French and just was not popular with his base, which led to the rise of Jack Layton because he actually was kind of a normal person. His kind old grandpa demeanor was absolutely honest. So really it's not that entirely impossible. If he campaigned more on the other candidates being completely phonies, then he could definitely been Prime Minister. He was sworn in as the first NDP government in Canadian history. Also, he campaigned to abolish the Canadian Senate, which sounds horrible and anti-democratic, but in reality, the Senate itself is horrible and anti-democratic. Given that, unlike America, you don't vote on it, they are appointed by the Prime Minister, and they serve until they're forced to retire at 75. But July 25th, and Jack is sent to the hospital.
These tests, whose results I received just last week, also indicate that I have a new cancer.
So Nicole Turnbull is appointed as the interim Prime Minister till August 22nd when Jack Layton passed away from cancer. Leaving behind a legacy so kind and genuine, he even got a state funeral while not being Prime Minister in real life. So Nicole would be the new Prime Minister, up until calls for a leadership challenge, which leads to scenario 4, which could work with the last one, but Nicole could win, but if she doesn't succeed in the leadership challenge, then the next Prime Minister would be Tom Mulcair from Ottawa. And if we're going to be honest, his term as Prime Minister would be very similar to Justin Trudeau's. But Trudeau would be an 11, and Mulcair would be more of a 5. One of progressiveness, but caution and slow integration. Not as sweeping and quick like Justin. So while being kind of diet Justin Trudeau, maybe he would also try to get rid of the Senate and campaign like Remember Jack. But it also has to be something that all the provinces would vote on, which is not happening, and then the Senate would have to vote to abolish themselves. Now, Tom Mulcair would definitely lose to Justin Trudeau in the next election, but if he never runs and the Liberals continue their path of being center, the Liberals will continue spiraling down, and the NDP finally crowns themselves as the dominant force of left politics in Canada. Which would be a great legacy for Nicole or Tom, whoever does it, till eventually they get voted out by 2019. Scenario 5, what if Erin O'Toole beat Trudeau? Now, Justin Trudeau won the 2019 election, but he wanted a more big majority, so he called for an early election in 2021 and got one more seat. And of course, it being so soon after the last one, everyone was frustrated, and not that many people's opinions really changed that much. Erin O'Toole, the former Veterans Affairs Minister, came in as honestly kind of a breath of the former PC party. He was very progressive in a lot of regards that would absolutely not be popular in other conservative parties in America, so he would have to try harder to get the support of the right of his party, while playing on people's frustrations with the pandemic, and guns, and Trudeau calling the early election in the first place, as well as taking the side of people don't respect Canadian history enough.
So much to celebrate in our country that we have to be proud to be Canadian. Is it the fact that I'm the only one running to be Prime Minister that's actually proud of our country?
As well as campaign harder in Quebec, supporting their burqa and religious items in public ban. Not that he really agrees with it, but he agrees that Quebec should be allowed to do what they want and stuff. Please vote for me. And I don't know, maybe Jagmeet Singh also targets Trudeau from his left. So ultimately, the two are pulling at everyone's frustrations, and Trudeau ends up losing. Even if O'Toole also got a minority government, this would send shockwaves through Canada. A lot of people, even in the conservative parties, were expecting him to lose, and this would oddly be the only second prime minister from the modern conservative party. So O'Toole gets to work showing the center-right still has a voice in Canada, securing the future. Repealing the assault weapon ban, which Americans can prove how not great that is. But honestly, O'Toole wouldn't be that ultra different from Trudeau's final years. Still left on a lot of issues, but a lot of people would claim he's very flip-floppy on a lot of others to appease the conservative side of his party. And with a minority government and O'Toole being center-left, this could possibly lead to an unheard-of coalition with the NDP, similar to the UK.
So, well done, Liberal Democrats. You've managed to become large enough that you can enter the government. Now, we have two choices for you. We have the incumbent Labour Party, whom you share more of your policies with and who you are generally more aligned with. And there is also the Conservatives, but we know that you two don't get along. I can fix him. They did not. Sure, they got to be Deputy Prime Minister, but they also got the Minister of State for the Cabinet Office and various secondary secretary roles.
The NDP members of government being seen as just roadblocks for Conservatives. It could even lead to a lot of people ditching the Conservatives for the People's Party. In Maxime Bernier's wet dreams, that's not happening. Erin would be popular at first, but he would definitely nosedive by the time of Trump's return, and he starts claiming that Canada should be the 51st states and start throwing tariffs all over them to prove how much of a big boy he is. O'Toole would fight that aggression, but not super hard, because he still wants a positive relation with America, which would ultimately drive people to Mark Carney. But if you want another orange crush, then former Premier of Alberta, or Governor, Rachel Notley. Even if that coalition lasted 3 years, Jagmeet would still get hurt by it and get ousted by Rachel. A left-wing victory in very conservative Alberta, though she mostly came to power due to their Conservative Party basically being in name only at this point, fighting against a insurgent's further right party. Notley was pro-oil being from Alberta, but she still has a record of very progressive positions, as well as being another voice from the West. So Erin O'Toole's legacy would be one of a callback to a more progressive conservative time, though infighting of conservatives would eventually doom his career. But what do you people think? You think it any interesting? Who would have you wanted to be Prime Minister? Did I get any of this information wrong? Let me know in the comments below, as well as hitting the subscribe button if you're new, and hyping on mobile is very appreciated. Honestly, from my understanding, it feels like Tom and Justin kind of swap parties, because Tom's far more liberal and Justin's far more NDP.